I never thought I'd end up here sitting in a cramped apartment, staring at the half-packed boxes scattered around me, my life reduced to cardboard and tape. But if you'd told me a year ago that I'd be ghosting my own parents, I'd have laughed in your face. Yet here I am, ready to walk away from the people who raised me. My name's Ethan, 27, software engineer by trade, and until recently a full-time doormat for my family. I've been living at my parents' house for most of my life, not because I'm some basement-dwelling hermit, but because it made financial sense. Rent is a nightmare in my area, and my parents George and Linda have always guilt-tripped me into staying, reminding me how family sticks together. I've been paying $500 a month since I turned 19, a chunk of my paycheck that supposedly helped keep the lights on, but more often just ended up funding my parents' vacation fund. Then there's my older brother Kyle, 30, the golden child in every sense. Kyle's the kind of guy who could set the house on fire, and my parents would praise his passion for fire safety. Growing up, I watched him coast through life while I did the heavy lifting. Chores, yard work, paying for my own stuff from the moment I got my first job at 16. Meanwhile, Kyle bounced between jobs like a bored kid, switching channels, always exploring his potential, as my mom liked to put it. About 6 months ago, Kyle's latest business venture, some shady NFT startup, tanked spectacularly. It didn't surprise me. The guy has the financial acumen of a drunk squirrel. Of course, that meant his wife Ashley, 29, and their 2 kids, Mia, 6, and Liam, 4, ended up back at my parents' place, dragging their untrained labradoodle Baxter along for the ride. They showed up one rainy Saturday looking like refugees from a failed reality show. Kyle in his worn-out college hoodie, Ashley with her designer purse, the kids already screaming, and Baxter peeing on my mom's azaleas. My parents, of course, welcomed them in without a second thought, as if I was the intruder in my own home. I remember my dad slapping Kyle on the back with a hearty, "We'll get you back on your feet, son," while my mom fussed over Ashley like she'd just returned from war. The house went from a relatively peaceful place to a chaotic war zone overnight. Baxter marked his territory on everything, including my shoes and gaming chair, which I found out the hard way one morning before work. Mia and Liam treated every room as their personal playground, leaving crayons, toys, and sticky handprints on everything. My home office, which I relied on for my remote work, was now their makeshift playroom filled with Lego landmines and screaming matches over iPad time. At first I tried to be patient. They were family after all. I put up with Kyle's late-night gaming sessions that shook the walls, Ashley's never-ending phone conversations about mommy influencers, and the kids using my bed as a trampoline when I wasn't home. I even swallowed my pride when I found out my mom had turned my old room into a storage unit for their stuff, pushing my things into the basement like I was a tenant on borrowed time. But the real kicker came about a month in. I was trying to finish a work project, deadlines looming, when my mom knocked on my door, her face tight with that "I need to ask you for a favor" expression. "Ethan, honey, can we talk for a second?" I glanced at the clock, my focus already slipping. "Sure, Mom, what's up?" She hesitated, twisting her wedding ring like she always does when she's about to ask for something big. "You know, with Kyle and his family staying here, our expenses have really gone up. Groceries, utilities, you name it." I was thinking, I already knew where this was heading, but I let her finish. "Maybe you could chip in a little more just until Kyle gets back on his feet." I paused, my fingers frozen on my keyboard. "Wait, you want me to pay more? I'm already paying $500 a month and Kyle's here with his whole family for free." Mom's face tightened. "It's not free, Ethan. They're family. We help each other out. Just another $300 a month should cover it." $800. They wanted me to pay $800 a month for a childhood bedroom that now doubled as a storage closet and kid zone in a house overrun by chaos and barking. I bit back the string of curse words that threatened to spill out. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Kyle, the golden child who couldn't hold a job longer than a TikTok trend, was freeloading with his entire clan, while I, the reliable one, was expected to bankroll their stay. I gave her a tight smile. "I'll think about it." But in that moment, something shifted. I realized I'd become a prisoner in my own home, paying rent to live in a madhouse while being taken for granted by the people who were supposed to have my back. I closed my laptop, my work forgotten, and walked out of my room. I needed airspace. Hell, I just needed to feel like I mattered again. As I stepped outside, Baxter shot past me, nearly tripping me as he chased a squirrel, barking like the world's smallest, fluffiest alarm system. I watched him disappear around the corner, a fitting metaphor for my own vanishing sense of self. I took a deep breath, the cold autumn air stinging my lungs. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, about setting boundaries, about finally breaking free from the shadow my brother had cast over my life for too long. I didn't know it yet, but that moment on the front porch would mark the beginning of the end. Not just of my time at my parents' house, but of my role as the family's financial safety net. I wish I could say things improved after that conversation with my mom, but if anything, it felt like the floodgates had opened. The house became a pressure cooker, every room filled with the sound of screaming kids, clinking dishes, and Kyle's loud, self-righteous lectures about his big comeback. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. I'd catch Ashley rooting around in the kitchen cabinet sighing loudly when the organic snacks she liked weren't in stock. Kyle would sit in the living room, feet up on the coffee table, whining about his bad back from all the stress while my parents fussed over him like he was a wounded war hero. One morning, I stumbled into the kitchen bleary-eyed and desperate for coffee, only to find Ashley already there, dumping the last of my French roast into the pot. I forced a tight smile, biting back a sarcastic comment about freeloaders and the cost of premium coffee. "Oh, sorry, Ethan," she chirped, flashing me that fake smile she reserved for people she considered beneath her. "I'll replace it, eventually." I just grunted and reached for a clean mug, only to find the cupboard empty. Everything had migrated to the sink, a chaotic mountain of crusty dishes and sippy cups. I ended up rinsing one off with scalding water while Ashley prattled on about some influencer's latest drama, completely oblivious to the dark circles under my eyes or the ticking time bomb my patience had become. Then came the night that broke the last fragile thread of my tolerance. I'd just wrapped up a brutal workday, coding through half a dozen bugs while fielding passive-aggressive Slack messages from my boss, when I heard the unmistakable sound of crashing metal from the garage. I found Kyle leaning against my old Honda, his kids using it as a jungle gym. Mia had somehow managed to wedge herself between the bumper and the workbench, while Liam was vigorously kicking one of my hubcaps like it owed him money. "Hey, get off my car!" I snapped louder than I'd intended. Kyle looked up genuinely surprised. "Chill, man, they're just playing." I felt my blood pressure spike. Playing, they're scratching the paint and bending the license plate. He scoffed, waving me off. "Dude, it's just a car. Lighten up." Just a car. The same car I'd spent years saving up for meticulously maintaining so I wouldn't have to blow my paycheck on repairs. The same car that had ferried me to countless late-night shifts, job interviews, and road trips with friends. I took a deep breath, feeling my fists clench at my sides. You know, maybe if you had a little more respect for other people's things, you wouldn't be living in mom and dad's guest room at 30. The garage fell into an awkward silence, broken only by the clinking of my ratchet set as Liam tried to pry one open with a screwdriver. Kyle's jaw tightened, his face reddening. "Real mature, Ethan. Not everyone has it as easy as you. Some of us have real responsibilities." I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound that echoed off the concrete walls. Responsibilities? Like raising kids you can't afford and crashing on your brother's dime. He straightened his hands, balling into fists. For a second, I thought he might actually take a swing at me, but he just stood there, breathing heavily, his face a twisted mask of wounded pride. I met his glare, feeling a strange, unfamiliar sense of satisfaction. For once, I wasn't the one backing down, the one bending to keep the peace. I turned to leave, then paused at the door, throwing one last shot over my shoulder. "Oh, and tell your kids to keep their hands off my stuff. I'm not their babysitter." I didn't stick around to see his reaction. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time in years. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the faint sound of Liam's whines and Mia's stomping footsteps seeping through the walls. I felt a pulse of guilt, a small nagging voice whispering that I'd crossed a line, that maybe I was being too harsh. But then I remembered my mom's expectant look as she asked for more rent, Kyle's dismissive tone in the garage, and the way my dad had nodded in silent agreement when my mom dropped the $800 bombshell at dinner the week before. No, enough was enough. I grabbed my phone and opened my banking app, scrolling through my savings. I'd been setting aside money for a down payment on a condo for years, telling myself that someday when the time was right, I'd finally make the leap. Maybe that time was now. I clicked over to a rental listing site, my heart racing as I started scrolling through apartments. The prices made me wince, but the thought of a quiet private space, no kids, no freeloaders, no guilt-tripping parents, filled me with a sense of hope I hadn't felt in months. I drifted off to sleep that night with visions of clean countertops, organized closets, and a bedroom door that actually stayed shut. I didn't know exactly how or when I'd make my move, but one thing was clear: I couldn't stay here much longer. The morning after my blow-up with Kyle in the garage, the tension in the house felt thicker than ever. My mom gave me the silent treatment over breakfast, her usual morning cheer replaced with tight-lipped disapproval. My dad barely looked up from his newspaper, the one he pretended to read to avoid actual conversations. Ashley, of course, acted like nothing had happened, gliding into the kitchen in her yoga pants and oversized sunglasses, talking a mile a minute about some mommy podcast she'd discovered. Kyle strolled in behind her, scratching his unshaven chin and offering me a half-hearted nod like we were just two bros who'd had a minor spat over a video game. I poured my coffee and ignored them, mentally checking off my to-do list for work when I noticed my laptop wasn't on the counter where I'd left it. My heart dropped. "Hey, has anyone seen my laptop?" I called out, trying to keep my voice level. Ashley looked up from her phone, blinking like a deer caught in headlights. Oh, Mia was using it earlier. Something about Roblox. I nearly choked on my coffee. "What, my work laptop?" Before she could respond, Mia came barreling down the hallway, her face streaked with tears. "Uncle Ethan, your laptop broke." My blood ran cold. I followed her into the living room where my laptop lay on the floor screen, flickering like a dying firefly, a fresh spiderweb of cracks splintering across the display. I froze, a dozen thoughts crashing into each other in my head. The laptop was my lifeline, the key to my remote work, the tool I relied on to pay my bills, and the device that held years of projects and data. I turned slowly to see Ashley hovering in the doorway, one manicured hand covering her mouth. "Oh my God, Ethan, I'm so sorry. She just wanted to play her little games. You didn't think my voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. That laptop cost over $2,000. It has all my work files on it." Kyle wondered in his brow, furrowing as he took in the scene. "What's the big deal, man? It's just a computer." I rounded on him, my fists clenching at my sides. "Just a computer? You know what, Kyle? I'm done. I'm done with you, with this house, with all of it." My dad shuffled in from the kitchen, eyes flicking from me to the shattered laptop on the floor. "What's going on in here?" I took a deep breath, feeling the walls close in around me. What's going on is that I'm being taken for granted in my own home. I'm paying more rent than anyone in this house, working my ass off, and you let your kids trash my stuff without a second thought. The room fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the low hum of the ceiling fan. My mom stepped in, her face a mask of forced calm. "Ethan, honey, it's just a laptop. We can figure this out." I shook my head, feeling the last shreds of my patience snap. "No, Mom. This isn't just about the laptop. It's about respect. It's about the fact that I'm treated like an ATM with legs while Kyle gets a free ride." Kyle bristled, his face flushing red. "Don't drag me into this, man. You're the one who's always so uptight, acting like you're better than everyone." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that felt foreign coming from my mouth. "Better, Kyle? I've been paying rent here for years while you've bounced from one failed scheme to the next. You've never paid a cent, and yet you act like you own this place." Ashley, sensing the shift in tone, grabbed Mia and pulled her back toward the hallway, whispering something about grown-up talk. My mom looked like she was about to burst into tears, her hands wringing together as she glanced nervously between me and my dad. Dad cleared his throat, his voice coming out rough and uncertain. "Ethan, this is your family. We need to stick together." I felt my jaw tighten, my teeth grinding together. Family, is that what this is? Because it feels more like a free hotel where I'm the only one footing the bill. Kyle stepped closer. His chest puffed out like he actually thought he could intimidate me. "You think you're so much better because you've got a job. You're pathetic, Ethan. All you do is hide in your room and tap away at your keyboard. At least I'm trying to do something big." "Big?" I snapped, my vision blurring at the edges. "Like that NFT scam you dragged Mom and Dad into, or the time you tried to flip used cars without knowing a damn thing about engines. You're not a visionary, Kyle. You're a mooch." He opened his mouth to fire back, but I cut him off, my voice echoing off the walls. "You know what? I'm done. I'm out. I'm moving out, and you can all figure out how to cover the bills without my rent." The room fell into a stunned silence, my mom's eyes welling up with tears, my dad's face hardening into a scowl. Kyle just stood there, his jaw clenching and unclenching like a malfunctioning robot. I turned on my heel, scooping up my broken laptop, and stormed back to my room, slamming the door behind me. My heart was racing, my hands shaking as I shoved clothes into a duffel bag, my mind already racing ahead to the listings I'd been scrolling through the night before. I knew this would blow up the family dynamic, but at that moment, I didn't care. I'd had enough of being the family's punching bag, the backup wallet, the afterthought. It was time to put myself first for a change. After my outburst, the house felt like a pressure cooker about to blow. My mom's tear-streaked face haunted me at every turn, her eyes puffy from crying, her voice thin and quivering whenever she tried to coax me into a conversation. My dad kept his distance, his silent disapproval seeping through every heavy sigh and muttered complaint about ungrateful kids. Kyle, on the other hand, took a different approach. He went full passive-aggressive, leaving his dirty dishes on the counter for me to clean up, letting Baxter tear into my sneakers without a word, and cranking his Xbox volume up to max whenever I tried to take a work call. Ashley just floated around like a ghost, avoiding eye contact and whispering to the kids whenever I entered the room like I was the family boogeyman. I started slipping out of the house as much as possible, spending long hours at coffee shops or wandering aimlessly around the city, my mind churning with plans and half-baked escape strategies. I knew I needed a solid plan if I was going to pull this off without my parents guilt-tripping me into staying. My first move was to secure a new place. I hit up my old college buddy Mark, who'd been living in a decent 2-bedroom apartment across town. We'd drifted apart over the years, but I remembered him mentioning his roommate had just moved out to live with his girlfriend. "Hey man," I texted, my heart pounding as I hit send. "You still looking for a roommate?" His response came back almost immediately. "Yo, actually, yeah, you serious?" "Dead serious," I replied. "Parents' place has turned into a circus." Mark sent a laughing emoji followed by, "Bro, I got you. Rent $750, utilities split 50-50. Move in whenever." I felt a strange mix of relief and fear. The rent was a bit more than I'd been paying my parents, but the freedom, the sweet untainted peace of a place without screaming kids and passive-aggressive siblings, was worth every penny. Next, I had to figure out how to get my stuff out without setting off alarm bells. I knew my parents would go full emotional warfare if they even caught a whiff of my escape plan. My mom would cry, my dad would lecture me about family loyalty, and Kyle would probably find some way to sabotage my exit just to make himself feel better. So I went full stealth mode. Every morning I'd pack a small box of my things, clothes, electronics, personal items, and slip them into my trunk before heading to work. I started slow testing the waters, taking only the stuff I knew my family wouldn't notice was missing. My winter jacket, some old college textbooks, a few gadgets I'd been meaning to sell anyway. By the second week, I'd gotten bolder, grabbing more significant items like my gaming console, my monitors, and my external hard drives. I started making regular stops at Mark's place, dropping off the boxes and stacking them neatly in the empty bedroom that would soon be mine. It felt like a heist. I'd slide out the door with a duffel bag over my shoulder, holding my breath as I eased my car down the driveway, the gravel crunching beneath my tires like the whispers of my parents' future accusations. One afternoon, as I was sneaking a stack of my graphic novels into the trunk, Mia popped up beside me, her head tilted curiously. "Uncle Ethan, what are you doing?" I froze, my heart lurching in my chest. Just taking some old stuff to donate," I lied, closing the trunk with a shaky smile. Her big blue eyes narrowed suspiciously like she knew I was full of crap. "Can I come?" "Not this time, kiddo," I said, quickly ruffling her hair before gently nudging her back toward the house. "Go help your mom, okay?" She pouted but eventually wandered off, and I let out a long, shaky breath, my pulse slowly returning to normal. I hadn't realized how tightly wound I'd become, every nerve in my body strung up like a live wire. The final straw came one Friday night about a week before my planned move. I was in the living room trying to drown out Kyle's obnoxious laughter as he watched YouTube videos on the big screen when my mom plopped down beside me, her eyes red and puffy. "Ethan," she said, her voice shaky, "we need to talk." I braced myself, every muscle in my body tensing. "What's up, Mom?" She sniffed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Your father and we've been struggling. Ever since you said you were moving out, things have been so tense. We just want our family to stay together." I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "Mom, I can't keep doing this. I'm not a kid anymore. I need my own space, my own life." "But Kyle's going through a rough time," she whispered, her eyes filling with fresh tears. "You know how hard it's been for him. The kids need stability, and Ashley, she's just trying her best." I closed my eyes, my fists tightening in my lap. "I get that, Mom, but I can't keep sacrificing my mental health and my finances just to keep the peace." She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. "I'm not changing my mind. I've already put down a deposit on an apartment. I'm moving out. Period." Her face crumpled, and for a moment I felt a pang of guilt, a small desperate urge to take it all back, to promise her that I'd stay, that I'd keep paying their bills and cleaning up after their messes. But then I remembered my shattered laptop, my ransacked room, and the countless nights I'd spent staring at the ceiling, wondering why I felt more like a tenant than a son. No, enough was enough. I stood up, walking away before she could start crying again, before my dad could come in and try to guilt-trip me with another lecture about family duty. I'd made my choice and there was no turning back. The morning of my planned escape, I woke up to the sound of Baxter scratching at my door, his high-pitched whining echoing through the hallway. I groaned, rubbing my eyes as the reality of my situation hit me. It was now or never. I threw on a hoodie and jeans, my heart racing as I started packing the last of my things. My work laptop, now repaired but still sporting a crack like a battle scar. My favorite hoodie, the framed picture of me and my friends from our college road trip, and the small stack of notebooks where I'd scribbled down game ideas over the years. I crept down the hallway, carefully avoiding the creaky floorboard outside my parents' room. I could hear my mom snoring lightly, my dad's deep, steady breathing blending into the background hum of the house. I felt a strange pang of nostalgia, a bittersweet ache in my chest as I stepped into the kitchen. The place was a mess. Cereal boxes left open, juice stains on the counter, a stack of unpaid bills spilling out of the drawer by the microwave. This had been my home for so long, a place full of memories, good and bad. But I knew I couldn't let those memories chain me here any longer. I started quietly loading boxes into my car, my breath fogging up in the cool morning air. My hands shook as I stacked my computer monitor on top of my gym bag, the adrenaline making my movements clumsy. I glanced nervously at the house with every trip, half expecting the front door to fly open and my parents to come storming out, demanding to know what the hell I thought I was doing. I was shoving the last box into my trunk when I heard the unmistakable creak of the front door. I froze, my heart lurching into my throat as I turned to see Kyle stepping onto the porch, his hair sticking up in every direction, a pair of mismatched socks on his feet. "Yo, where you going?" he called, rubbing his eyes as he squinted at my loaded car. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. I could lie, make up some excuse about an early work meeting or a weekend trip, but I was tired of lying, tired of hiding my plans, tired of being the one who always had to tiptoe around everyone else's feelings. "I'm moving out," I said, my voice coming out steadier than I expected. Kyle's bleary eyes widened, his mouth hanging open in genuine shock. "What, dude, are you serious?" I straightened, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. "Yeah, I've had enough. I'm done being the family ATM." He took a shaky step forward, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "Come on, man. Don't be like that. You know how hard things have been for us." I felt a flicker of anger spark in my chest, memories flashing through my mind. The shattered laptop, the ruined sneakers, the endless nights of babysitting his kids while he and Ashley went out to reconnect. "I'm not your safety net, Kyle," I said, my voice cold. "Figure it out, like the rest of us have to." He stumbled over his words, his face flushing with a mix of anger and desperation. "Bro, you're being selfish. We're family. You can't just bail on us." I let out a bitter laugh, slamming my trunk shut with a satisfying thud. Family. That's rich coming from the guy who's never paid a dime in rent, who lets his kids trash my stuff, and who expects me to bankroll his failures. Kyle took another step closer, his face twisted in a sneer. "Oh, so you're better than me now? Just because you have a steady job and a crappy old car?" I met his glare, feeling the last shreds of my patience snap. "Yeah, maybe I am. At least I'm not dragging my family down with me." For a moment, I thought he might take a swing at me, his fists clenching and unclenching at his sides, his jaw tightening like a rusty vise. But then the front door creaked open again, and my mom stepped onto the porch, her robe fluttering around her like a worn-out cape. "Ethan," she whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. What's going on?" I forced myself to meet her gaze, my chest tightening at the sight of her tear-streaked face. "I'm moving out, Mom. I've already signed a lease. I'm done." She staggered back a step, one hand flying to her chest as if I'd just punched her. But you can't. We need you here. Kyle and the kids, they need you." I felt my hands curl into fists, my nails biting into my palms. "No, Mom. They need to take responsibility for themselves. I can't keep sacrificing my life, my sanity, just to keep everyone else comfortable." Her face crumpled, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Please, Ethan, don't do this. We're family. We stick together." I felt my resolve waver, my chest tightening as the weight of her words hit me. But then I remembered all the times I'd been taken for granted, all the sacrifices I'd made while Kyle and Ashley coasted through life on my parents' dime. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay strong. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I have to do this. For me." Without waiting for her response, I turned, climbed into my car, and started the engine. I didn't look back as I pulled out of the driveway, the crunch of gravel beneath my tires echoing like the final nails in the coffin of my old life. As I drove down the quiet tree-lined street, the sun just beginning to peek over the rooftops, I felt a strange, overwhelming sense of freedom wash over me. I was finally free. The first thing I noticed about Mark's apartment was the silence. It hit me the moment I stepped through the door, my arms full of boxes and my heart still pounding from the adrenaline rush of my hasty exit. There were no shrieking kids, no barking dogs, no clattering dishes or muffled arguments echoing down the hallway. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic drifting through the cracked window. Mark appeared from the kitchen, a beer in hand and a lopsided grin on his face. "Welcome to freedom, man," he said, clinking his bottle against the box in my arms. I managed a weak laugh, my muscles aching as I dropped the box onto the worn carpet. "Thanks, dude. I owe you one." "Don't mention it," he replied, sinking into the battered leather couch and kicking his feet up on the coffee table. "Mi casa es su casa." I looked around, taking in the cluttered coffee table, the stack of empty pizza boxes by the door, the mismatched chairs around the small kitchen table. It was far from perfect, but it felt like a palace compared to the chaos I just left behind. Mark leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied my expression. "You good?" I hesitated, the weight of my decision suddenly crashing down on me. I'd just walked away from my family, my childhood home, the only life I'd ever known. I felt a strange mix of relief and grief, a dizzying cocktail of emotions that left me reeling. "Yeah," I said, finally sinking into the couch beside him. "I think I'm good." That night, I slept like a rock, sprawled out on the old futon Mark had dragged in from his storage unit. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up to the sound of Baxter scratching at my door or Mia screaming about lost toys. Just pure blissful silence. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Mark clattering around in the kitchen, frying eggs and humming off-key to some 90s rock ballad. I stumbled into the kitchen, still groggy but already feeling lighter, like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. "Morning, man," Mark said, sliding a plate of scrambled eggs and toast across the counter. "Figured you could use a decent breakfast." I blinked at the plate, the simple, generous gesture hitting me harder than I'd expected. I mumbled a quick thanks, trying to ignore the sudden sting in my eyes as I dug into the warm, buttery toast. As the days turned into weeks, I slowly started to rebuild my life. I set up my desk in the corner of my new bedroom, organized my game consoles on the IKEA shelf. Mark had helped me lug up the stairs and even strung up a few LED lights for that gamer cave vibe I'd always wanted. Work became my refuge, my laptop humming quietly on my desk as I coded through long hours, finally able to focus without the constant interruptions of kids barging into my room or dogs chewing on my cables. I even started working on my passion project, a small indie game I'd been dreaming about for years but never had the headspace to start. I cut my parents off financially too, blocked their access to my savings, canceled the automatic rent payments I'd been making for years, and changed every password they might have known. I even switched my phone plan to a new carrier just in case they tried to guilt me into coming back. Of course, the texts and calls started almost immediately. My mom left a dozen voicemails, her voice shaky and pleading, alternating between guilt trips and tearful apologies. "Ethan, please come home. We miss you. Your father's been so worried. You can't just walk away from your family. Don't do this to us, Ethan. We need you." I deleted each one without listening past the first few seconds, my jaw tightening every time my phone buzzed with another incoming call. Kyle tried to call me once too, his number flashing on my screen late one Friday night. I ignored it, picturing him on my parents' couch, a beer in one hand, his Xbox controller in the other, fuming about my betrayal. Even Ashley sent me a text, a short passive-aggressive message that reeked of her usual entitlement. "Real mature, Ethan. I hope you're proud of yourself." I didn't respond. A few weeks later, I heard through a mutual friend that my parents had finally kicked Kyle out. Apparently, my sudden departure had thrown their finances into chaos, and without my rent money, they'd been forced to confront the uncomfortable truth. They couldn't afford to bankroll Kyle's freeloading lifestyle forever. He'd tried to crash with a few of his old friends, but word had spread quickly about his tendency to mooch and burn bridges, and he'd ended up crashing at a sketchy motel on the outskirts of town. I felt a pang of guilt when I first heard the news. A small, stubborn part of me, still clinging to the old, deeply ingrained belief that family meant unconditional support, no matter how much it cost me. But as the days turned into weeks and my life slowly started to feel like my own again, that guilt began to fade, replaced by a fierce, unshakable sense of relief. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I started going to the gym again, reconnecting with old friends, even taking up guitar lessons, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time or energy for. And as I sat on the balcony one cool autumn evening, my fingers fumbling over the strings of my new acoustic guitar, I realized something important. I hadn't just walked away from my family. I'd walked away from the version of myself that let people walk all over me, that sacrificed his own happiness for the sake of others, that stayed silent while everyone else shouted over him. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly, undeniably free. Story 2. I'm Nora. I'm 36, and for the last 12 years, I gave everything I had: time, energy, relationships, vacations to run my father's logistics company, the same company that barely broke even before I took over. I didn't inherit anything. I earned my seat. When my dad asked for help, I came home from New York, left behind a more glamorous job, and stepped in. And slowly, contract by contract, night by night, I rebuilt the entire business. We went from a dusty local warehouse to a national network with high-efficiency routing, tech-based tracking, and a client list that reads like a Fortune 500 roster. From a floundering $3 million operation to a $75 million valuation. You'd think that would mean something. You'd think at a bare minimum it'd earn you a little loyalty. Nope. Last month at a fancy family dinner hosted by my father at his country club, tablecloths, champagne, the whole facade, he stood up in front of everyone, extended relatives, board members, longtime clients, and said, "I'm proud to announce my son Aiden will be taking over as CEO of Grayson Logistics next quarter." He smiled when he said it, proud, warm, like he was giving out medals. I sat there frozen, fork halfway to my mouth, smile half formed. Aiden smiled too, smug. He hadn't even flinched, which meant he knew. Everyone started clapping. My cousin stood and raised his glass. I stared at my father like he had just announced the company was going public, and I was the janitor. 12 years, and I wasn't even worth a phone call before the big reveal. Let me explain something. Aiden didn't build this business. He didn't even understand it. While I was grinding through RFPs and merger negotiations, Aiden was posting startup quotes on LinkedIn and launching one doomed tech pivot after another. He failed upward so many times I stopped counting. And still he got the title. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I just sat there heart-pounding, thinking I really should have seen this coming. My father always liked tradition, and tradition in his eyes meant that the son got the keys, even if he didn't know how to drive. Later that night, my mom found me in the kitchen alone with a glass of wine. She didn't say I'm sorry or that was wrong. She just said quietly, "He still sees you as temporary, Nora, even after all this time." And you know what? That hurt more than anything. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there going over every late-night delivery route I'd mapped, every deal I closed, every time I backed down when I should have spoken up. But mostly I thought about the one thing Aiden didn't know. I didn't just run Grayson Logistics. I owned it. Not all of it, but enough. Over the years, I'd quietly accumulated a 62% stake in the company, a mix of gifted shares, emergency capital investments my father had needed, and a few well-timed legal arrangements during a financial restructuring 3 years ago. He thought I was just the COO with a work ethic. He had no idea I was also the majority shareholder. That realization hit me around 3 a.m. and I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not even triumphant, just clear. I didn't need to fight for my place anymore. Because I already had it. On paper. In ink. Signed, sealed, notarized. Next morning, 4:45 a.m. I walked into the office like nothing had changed. I passed coworkers whispering by the break room, clearly having heard the news. I smiled, nodded, said good morning like it was just another Tuesday. In my office, I pulled up the digital folder, executive agreements, shareholder rights, Nora finalized. It was all there. Legal, valid, binding. And just like that, I started planning the meeting that would turn their little dinner celebration into a footnote. At 9:00 a.m., my dad and Aiden walked into my office like they were claiming a throne. My father looked pleased, Aiden looked cocky. "Nora," my dad said, "let's talk about transition planning. You'll support Aiden during the shift, of course." I looked up from my desk, calm. "Of course," I said. "Let's start with this." I turned my screen so they could see it, the executive clause that clearly stated no CEO change could happen without approval from the majority shareholder, which was me. My dad blinked. "That's not possible. You have, what, 30%? Try 62%, I said. "You signed off on most of it yourself." Aiden was already grabbing the printed copy from my desk, eyes darting through the clauses, color draining from his face. "This is a joke," he muttered. "No," I said. "This is business." I'll admit I enjoyed that moment, watching both of them realize they'd made the announcement a little too soon. Watching my father realize that the company he thought he still ruled wasn't his to give anymore. I'm not here to fire anyone, I said, but if you think Aiden's just going to waltz in and take over, think again. He can join the leadership team. He can learn how things work. But CEO? No. There was silence. Then my father, ever the traditionalist, tried the guilt route. This isn't what family does, he said. I looked him dead in the eye. Neither is blindsiding your daughter in front of 24 people. By noon, the board had been notified. Legal had confirmed everything. My name wasn't on the door because of nepotism. It was because I put it there. Word spread faster than I expected. By the time I stepped into the boardroom the next day, everyone knew. I didn't need to explain what happened. They'd seen the documents, the shareholder list, the clause I'd quietly included during the last restructuring. Some smiled at me, respectful, cautious. Others kept their faces blank, but they were all watching closely now. I sat at the head of the table, not at the side, not beside Aiden, at the head. My father was late. So was Aiden. The CFO, Mark, cleared his throat and said, "Should we start?" I shook my head. Let's give them 5 minutes. We didn't have to wait long. They came in at the same time. Dad in his usual tailored navy suit, eyes tired but composed. Aiden right behind him, less confident now, flipping through his notes like they were going to save him. My father nodded at the group and then turned to me. "Nora, can we talk privately?" I kept my tone neutral. "This is the board, Dad. If we're going to talk about leadership, this is where it happens." He paused, jaw tight, then nodded once and sat down. I started simply. "For the record, I'm not disputing the legacy my father built. He founded Grayson Logistics when all we had was a rusty truck and 2 clients who paid late. He kept it alive during tough years. We all owe him for that." I let that sit for a moment, then added, "But we're not talking about legacy today. We're talking about leadership." I clicked the remote and brought up a graph on the screen. Revenue, growth, market expansion, 12 years, all of it under my management. We've expanded to 9 new states. We've brought in 300% more revenue. Our client retention rate has tripled. And we've done it without layoffs or losing control to outside investors. I turned to the board. There's no crisis here. No reason to change course. Aiden jumped in before I could say more. "I get it. Nora's done good work. But we also have to think about vision. Next generation leadership. New energy." I didn't even blink. "You mean like the tech consulting firm you launched that burned through $2 million and didn't survive the first audit?" His face flushed. "Or the app you pitched to Dad last year that was just a rebranded scheduling tool with zero back-end security?" "I'm not here to fight," he muttered. "You weren't here to work either," I said calmly. The room went silent. My father leaned forward. "You're right," he said, addressing the board. "Nora has done incredible work. I underestimated the scale of her contribution. But I still believe it's important for this company to remain a family enterprise." I nodded. "It still is. But that doesn't mean titles get handed out like holiday cards." I offered them both something. I wasn't interested in burning bridges. I just wanted them to stop pretending I hadn't already earned my place. "Aiden can stay," I said. "He'll be part of business development. A real role. Real oversight. No shortcuts." "And me?" Dad asked quietly. I paused. "You'll stay on as chair emeritus. Title only. No voting rights, no management decisions." It was respectful, symbolic, and it gave him what he really wanted: public dignity. He looked away for a moment, then nodded. "All right." After the meeting, Aiden pulled me aside. "You really planned this?" I looked him in the eye. "No, I just protected myself. You and Dad made the rest easy." He didn't answer, just walked away. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel triumphant, but I felt steady. That weekend, Dad called me. He didn't ask about work. He just asked if I was free for lunch. I said yes. We sat at his favorite diner, just the 2 of us. No lawyers, no boardroom. "I thought you'd be furious," he said, stirring his coffee. I was. He gave a small nod. "But I'm not trying to punish you," I added. "I just don't want to be erased." He sighed. "You're not. I see you now." That might have meant something years ago. But now? Now it was just a fact. I thought things would quiet down after that. They didn't. It started with whispers, industry friends calling to check in, old colleagues suddenly asking for lunch. I wasn't naive. I knew what they were really asking. "Is it true? Did you really block your own brother? How's your father taking it?" The headlines didn't help. Family feud at Grayson Logistics. Daughter overthrows legacy CEO. Grayson heir denied, board drama unfolds. They made it sound like a soap opera. Nobody mentioned the 12 years of work. The nights I worked late while Aiden networked over drinks. The weekends I skipped because trucks were stalled and the systems were crashing. No, that part never makes the news. What made the news was a woman saying no and meaning it. My father tried damage control with a statement. It was neutral, polite, said he was stepping aside to let the next generation lead. Said it was an exciting new chapter. Not a lie, but not the truth either. Aiden went quiet. I didn't hear from him for a few weeks. When I finally did, it was an email. No subject line, just one sentence. You didn't have to humiliate me. I didn't reply. Because I hadn't humiliated him. I'd protected the company, and I'd protected myself. That wasn't spite, that was survival. There were days it felt heavy. I'd walk into the office and feel the silence stretch longer than it should. Some people weren't sure how to act. Some looked at me differently. Not hostile, just uncertain, like I'd broken some rule I wasn't supposed to break. Like I'd stopped being the COO they quietly relied on and started being the CEO they didn't know how to approach. That's the thing about taking power when no one expected you to. People don't always know where to place you. But that didn't stop me. I focused on the work. I restructured the top-heavy middle management. We cut overhead by 8% in one quarter. I signed 2 new contracts that opened up international distribution routes. I launched a mentorship program for junior managers, half of them women, something we'd never had before. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give big speeches. I just kept going. And slowly people adjusted. They started coming to me again, not with hesitation, but with purpose. They started using my title without tripping over it. Not Nora. Do you have a second? Just Nora, what do you think? That's how I knew I hadn't just kept the company. I'd earned it again. One night I stayed late. The building was quiet, cleaners long gone. I walked through the halls like I used to when I was just starting, double-checking dispatch schedules, resetting servers, dropping off snacks for the drivers. I stopped outside my new office. CEO etched clean into the glass. For a long time, I used to wonder what it would feel like to get there, to finally have the title, the recognition, the authority. But standing there that night alone, I realized the title didn't mean what I thought it would. What mattered was that I didn't wait for someone to hand it to me. I took it when it was already mine. A few months later, my father and I had coffee again. He looked older than I remembered. Not tired, just smaller somehow, quieter. I read about the Singapore deal, he said. That's a big win. It is. He stirred his tea, nodded. Your grandfather? He'd be proud. I didn't say anything. He looked at me. I should have seen this coming. All of it. You did, I said gently. You just didn't want to. He smiled faint. I guess I didn't. That was it, no apology. But I didn't need one. I'd stopped chasing that part of the story. Aiden still hasn't reached out again. Last I heard, he was in Arizona trying to start something new. I wish him well genuinely. We're not close. Maybe we never were. But I don't hate him. We were both trying to live up to something we didn't build. The difference is, I stopped trying to prove I belonged, and I just belonged. Grayson Logistics passed $100 million valuation last quarter. The team threw a small celebration. I didn't make a speech. I just thanked them one by one, the warehouse crew, the drivers, the interns who stayed late during audits. I looked around the room and thought, this is what it should have been about all along. Not legacy, not favoritism, not some imagined hierarchy based on birth order. Just work, and who was willing to do it. So here I am, running a company most people thought I would leave, carrying the weight of what was built before me, but reshaping it in my own name. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not trying to prove anything. I just run the business, with honesty, with vision, and with a quiet kind of pride that no announcement or headline can ever replace. They thought I needed permission. What I needed was time. And now that I've taken it, I'm not giving it back. I'm 33 now, but this started just a few months back. A call came in from the bank about a $200,000, $1,000 loan application, except I hadn't applied for anything. At first I figured it had to be some kind of scam, identity theft maybe, but when I dug into the details it became clear. It wasn't some stranger, it was my own parents. They'd taken out the loan in my name, forged my signature, all to pay for my younger sister's wedding. Sienna, 28, has always been the golden child. I've never been close to her. Growing up, I was the one they told to be the bigger person whenever she threw tantrums or wrecked something that belonged to me. Sienna wanted the world, and my parents gave it to her at the cost of anyone else in the room. This time it cost me a $200,000 legal nightmare. They didn't even invite me to the wedding. That detail might sound minor after the fraud part, but for me it was the gut punch that drove it all home. They used my name, my credit, my future, and didn't even think I deserved a seat at the reception. I found out the wedding had already happened when I drove to the address on the invite and found nothing there. Just a lawn empty. I called Sienna thinking maybe I'd written it down wrong. She laughed, actually laughed, said, "Oh, that was a decoy. We didn't want you showing up and making it awkward. You're too cheap and judgmental to be part of something this important." Then she hung up. That phone call was the moment something inside me snapped. Not from anger, not from heartbreak, just a clean, cold severing. A shift from what did I do wrong to what are they about to learn. When I called my parents after the bank reached out, they didn't even pretend it wasn't true. My dad said it was natural for family to help out, and that since I didn't have a wedding of my own, I should be happy to contribute to Sienna's. He said those words without flinching. I asked them how they could justify signing my name. My mom answered like it was the most logical thing in the world. "Well, if we asked, you would have said no." This was faster. They knew I had plans, real plans. I'd been saving to start my own design business, had spent months lining up investors, and was about to leave my job. They knew all of this. Still, they risked it. Because Sienna wanted a fairy tale wedding and they didn't want to tell her no. Kevin, her fiancé, has a decent job. So does she. Not rich but stable. But no, they wanted fireworks, a horse-drawn carriage, a rooftop reception, and a $25,000 custom dress, and they wanted me to silently pay for it. My father kept telling me I was being dramatic, that going to court over a piece of paper would embarrass the whole family, that I was overreacting. Maybe I was, but not in the way he meant. I lawyered up. Fast, requested every document from the bank, got copies of the forged signature, took pictures, emailed the fraud report. My lawyer was stunned but not surprised. Said stuff like this: family fraud is more common than people think, especially when it involves a favorite child. Then I did something some people would call petty. I don't regret it. I messaged Kevin. Told him everything. The loan, the forgery, the decoy address. I said, "You're marrying into a family that commits fraud and treats it like family bonding. Think carefully." Then I sent the same message to a few of Sienna's close friends, and both sides of our extended family. I didn't care about being classy. I cared about being heard. Sienna found out quickly. She blew up my phone, said I was ruining her life, her wedding, and her relationship. Said I should have come to her first, not gone public. At first I started to second-guess myself. What if she really didn't know? But it didn't last long. Because when I asked her directly, "Did you know about the loan?" she paused. She didn't say no. She said it wasn't your business, it was for the family. That was my answer. Things unraveled fast after that. Kevin's parents were furious. Not just about the fraud, but about how they'd been lied to. They'd set strict limits on what they were willing to contribute to the wedding and suddenly found out someone else was footing the rest under false pretenses. My sister called me a few days later crying. Kevin had left. The engagement was off. She said I'd ruined everything. I didn't gloat, I just listened. Then in the calmest voice I could manage, I told her, "No. Our parents ruined everything when they forged my name. You were just okay with it." She tried to argue, said it wasn't that serious, that she was scared I'd ruin the wedding if I found out. Said she didn't think the bank would ever contact me. But they did. And now it was too late. The fallout came fast. My parents begged me to reconsider the lawsuit, told me I was tearing the family apart, said I was being cruel to Sienna, that I was heartless for letting her suffer. I reminded them who committed the fraud. They stopped calling after that. But the rest of the family didn't. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Half told me I was brave, the other half told me I was selfish. Sienna started posting vague emotional quotes on Instagram. Stuff like "the deepest wounds come from those who say they love you," and "betrayal wears many masks." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. I had the bank, the law, and the truth on my side, and for once that was enough. A week after the engagement ended, things got quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet in that uncomfortable way where the phone doesn't ring, but you know people are talking behind your back. My lawyer called. The bank had completed its investigation. Good news, the loan had been flagged as fraud before it fully dispersed. I wouldn't be on the hook for repayment. They'd frozen the account. I was safe. But my parents weren't. The bank filed charges. Not just forgery, but also financial misrepresentation. Turns out they'd lied about their income and assets to qualify. The investigation opened wider. Suddenly, my parents were dealing with real legal consequences, not just a mad daughter. I wish I could say I felt good, like justice was sweet, but that's not what I felt. Mostly I felt tired. Sienna messaged me again. This time no insults. Just one line: "You really did it." Yeah, I did. I broke the illusion they'd been holding on to for decades, that they could get away with anything as long as they called it family. My inbox started filling again. Messages from relatives, some neutral, some trying to patch things up. A few were furious, accusing me of destroying my sister's future. But one message stood out. It was from my Aunt Rachel. She wasn't close to either side. Kind woman, quiet, never got involved. She wrote, "I don't blame you. I've seen how they treated you. I just hope you come out of this with peace, not just victory." That stuck with me. I started wondering, what did I actually want? Because I'd made my point, I'd cleared my name. But now my parents were looking at court dates and fines. Their retirement savings almost gone. Sienna jobless and couch surfing. My lawyer said we had a strong civil case too. I could sue for damages for emotional distress for the months of stress and reputation loss. We'd probably win. But what would that give me besides more broken pieces? I didn't decide right away. I took a few days, walked by the lake near my apartment, cleared my head. That's when the settlement offer came. Their lawyer reached out, offered to pay a significant sum to make it go away. It wasn't hush money. It was accountability dressed in legal paperwork. My parents would pay restitution. The charges would still stand with the bank, but I'd drop the civil suit. It was tempting. I could take the money, start the business I'd been planning, and finally move on. No more courtrooms, no more family group texts pretending I was overreacting. But part of me still hesitated. I didn't want them to think money fixed this, that forgiveness was for sale, that this wasn't about betrayal but inconvenience. I sat with it, talked to my lawyer, talked to no one else. Finally, I accepted, not for them, for me. The terms were simple: a lump sum payment, written acknowledgement of wrongdoing, a clause barring them from opening accounts in my name ever again. I signed, they signed. It was over. Sort of. A few days after the paperwork went through, I got a call. Unknown number. It was Sienna. Her voice sounded different, not angry, just flat. "They sold the house," she said. "Mom and Dad. They're moving into a small rental." I stayed quiet. "They've got almost nothing left. The fines, legal fees, it's all catching up." She paused, then added, "I'm not calling to guilt you. I just thought you should know." I didn't say much. Just told her actions have consequences. You know that now. She didn't argue. That surprised me. She said I was wrong. I did know about the loan. I lied. I told myself it wasn't hurting you because you weren't supposed to find out. That was the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. I asked her, "Why didn't you say this earlier?" She replied, "Because I was scared you'd do exactly what you did." I didn't know whether to laugh or feel sorry for her. "Then maybe you should have been scared sooner," I said. After we hung up, I felt a strange relief, like a tight knot in my chest had finally come undone. Not because things were healed, but because the mask was gone. No more pretending she didn't know. No more doubt in my own memory. She admitted it. I wasn't crazy. The next week, I started working on my business again. The settlement money wasn't life-changing, but it was enough to launch. I rented a small space downtown, started designing, building, breathing. The silence from my parents stayed. I didn't call them. They didn't call me. And for once, I didn't feel guilty about it. I was building something of my own now, and I wasn't afraid they could take it. The first few weeks after the settlement were quiet. No court dates, no more emails from lawyers, no calls from the bank. I could finally breathe again. Every morning, I walked to my small studio office with a cup of coffee in hand, flipped on the lights, and got to work. No more distractions, no more spinning thoughts, just clean air and open space. The business started slow. Local clients, freelance contracts, but I didn't care. It was mine. Paid for with money that came with scars, yes, but it was also a symbol. It said they didn't break me. One evening, I got another message from Aunt Rachel again. Just a short email: "I'm proud of you. You chose truth over comfort. That matters." That line stuck with me. For years, I thought being a good daughter meant swallowing things, keeping the peace, being silent. Turns out telling the truth without yelling, without drama, just plainly takes more strength than I realized. Sienna called again. I almost didn't answer, but I did. She didn't ask for anything. Didn't try to explain again. She just said, "Mom and Dad are moving into an apartment next month. They won't admit it, but they're scared." I nodded even though she couldn't see it. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I think I spent most of my life assuming people would clean up after me. I never thought I'd be the one holding the broken pieces." There was a pause, then she added, "I'm sorry I let it get this far." I didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't. But I said thank you. She asked if I'd ever come visit, maybe sit down, talk. I told her not yet, Because even if you forgive someone, you don't owe them immediate access to your peace. That night, I sat on my balcony looking at the quiet street stars dim behind city haze. I thought about everything we'd been taught growing up. Family first. Keep things private. Don't embarrass each other. Sacrifice when needed. But none of that meant what they thought it did. Family first doesn't mean let them ruin your life to avoid a fight. Keeping things private doesn't mean hiding abuse or betrayal. And sacrifice, that only means something when it's a choice, not something stolen from you behind your back. 1 month later, I opened my inbox to an unexpected message. From Kevin. Short, polite. He said he just wanted to say he was sorry for how everything unfolded. Said he didn't understand the full picture back then, that he wasn't proud of how he handled it. He wasn't asking for anything, just clarity. He wrote, "I hope you're doing well. I hope you know you weren't wrong." I didn't reply, I didn't need to, but I was glad he said it. Eventually, I ran into my mom. I was picking up supplies at a local store. She was at the register ahead of me. Her hair was thinner than I remembered. Her eyes looked tired. She turned, saw me, froze. I didn't smile, but I didn't look away. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but then closed it, paid for her items, walked out. I stood there for a moment, then bought my paint and left. That was our reunion. No screaming, no scene, just two people who had walked too far in opposite directions to meet halfway anymore. Now, months later, I still walk the same street every morning. I still flip the lights in my studio and take a breath before starting work. My business has grown slowly, honestly. A few local contracts became long-term clients. A former coworker sent referrals. I even got invited to speak at a small community event about entrepreneurship and financial boundaries. And when I stood in front of that group, I didn't talk about revenge, or bitterness, or broken trust. I talked about resilience. I said, sometimes the people closest to you will ask for things that cost you everything, but they'll call it love. And I paused. Then I added, it's okay to say no, even if they call you selfish. The truth is, I don't hate my parents. I just don't trust them. And I've learned that trust is a door, not a gift. Once broken, it doesn't swing open again just because time has passed. It takes work to reopen it. They haven't done that work. Maybe one day they will. But I'm not waiting anymore. I still talk to Sienna sometimes. We're not close, but we're not enemies either. She's learning what it's like to live without shortcuts, without someone to clean things up for her. And me, I'm learning how to live without trying to be accepted by people who never saw me clearly to begin with. That's freedom. So here's what I've learned. Family can disappoint you, deeply, but that doesn't mean you have to carry it forever. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to protect your name, your peace, and your future. You're allowed to build something new, even if it means starting from nothing. I did. And for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of who I am without them. I'm just free.